The movie is called Call Jane. I viewed it on Amazon Prime. It is based on the underground activist group of women in Chicago that helped facilitate abortions during the 1960s. They were called the Janes or the Janes Collective because there were flyers put up with a number saying something like, "If you are pregnant and need help, call Jane," with a phone number. At this point in the 20th century, women were secretly getting abortions from risk-taking doctors and back-alley abortionists. Often, they were sent home bleeding with little or no information. The women often ended up sterile, in the hospital or in the morgue. At least 22,800 women in 2018 died from unsafe abortions, per a report from Guttmacher Institute. The Janes, the activist group, were the women's line of defense against unwanted pregnancy in the 1960s before Roe v. Wade. Heather Booth was a true child of the post-war baby boom. She was born in Mississippi in 1945 and as she matured became active in the civil rights movement, later moving to Chicago. Booth married fellow activist Paul Booth. She and Paul had 2 children and appeared from the outside like a traditional family, but were activists from the civil rights movement to the Vietnam War resistance. The abortion movement began when a friend called Booth's sister frantically upset as she was pregnant. She was overwhelmed and suicidal. The sister made contact with Heather asking for help. Through the Medical Committee for Human Rights, Booth was referred to a surgeon with the civil rights movement, Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who secretly performed abortions. Then Booth began to get calls from other women needing an abortion. She set up a phone and tape recorder first in her dorm and recorded the calls on 3x5 index cards with the woman's information. The group was formed from activists and women who had gone through an abortion wanting to help the cause. They reviewed the index cards and one person would take a card and call. The women who came for abortions were advised on what the procedure would entail. At first the method used was dilation and curettage, D&C. Dr. Howard fled the South after being put on a KKK hit list and went to Chicago to join the civil rights movement there. He provided Heather's friend with the abortion. Heather Booth was getting more referrals, and Howard performed more abortions. When he stopped, they found a doctor they called Mike to perform the procedure. The underground network was thriving. A process was formed to take in the patients and protect the organization. It included taking the patient and those accompanying her to a secure location. The organization called it the Front. Soon it was learned that Mike, though extremely proficient with procedure, was not a credentialed doctor. It is then the women realized if he could do it, he could train them to do it. He was also wanting to stop performing abortions. The women were then able to perform more abortions with more staff. The cost was $100, but special circumstances were allowed to complete the abortion. The people, which included the patient, family, or significant other, would be driven to the front. An apartment was used as a reception area. There would be cookies and food to eat, and they would remain there. The patients would be transported by car to the location, another apartment for the procedure. The drivers would use their own cars to transport the patients. The women at the front were in charge of entertaining the family members while they waited. There were not many people driving at that time, so those Janes were valued and overworked. The group performed 11,000 safe abortions. But in 1972, 2 Catholic women went to the police stating their sister was going to have an abortion. The police raided the building asking for the doctor. They expected a male practitioner, not the 7 women they arrested who were performing the abortions. All 7 later released on bond. By this time the group of women had learned several types of abortion, the cannula for early pregnancies, the supercoil method used in later stage, that caused miscarriages, and the most common D&C method. With the passage of Roe v. Wade in 1973, the charges were dropped against the women. With the reversal of Roe v. Wade, it has never been more important for women to stand up and fight for their right to determine the health and well-being of their own body.